a week later it would show up and like the same thing. And then the craziest.
Welcome back. This is ConspWrld, The Week in the Strange, narrated so you don't have to sit through all of it. This week, a Special Forces pilot swears a 12-foot, red-haired giant was flown out of an Afghan cave. A guest says King Solomon raised the first temple with an army of bound demons. And an occult historian claims Aleister Crowley fed Hitler fake star charts to lose the war. Listen close. And 3 of this week's guests are circling the same unsettling idea, that the monuments and the turning points we call history were shaped by things that were never quite human. Let's fall in. First, the Joe Rogan Experience, number 2530, with researcher Timothy Alberino. In his telling, a C-130 crew flew the body of a 12-foot, 6-fingered giant out of Afghanistan. Wild as it sounds, the whole tradition rests on a real text, the Book of Enoch, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which expands the Genesis 6 giants in the earth. Here is the account.
They were actually putting their feet up to this guy's feet, this dead giant's feet, and seeing how small their feet were compared to his. Now, the giant had red hair. He had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. His feet were wrapped in like a crude canvas foot wrapping. And he was solid as a rock. Again, most of his body was covered by a tarp, but the pilot and the guys around him were hitting him with their fists. And he came up to about their midsection, laying in the fetal position. And the pilot told me he was solid as a rock, this guy. And he asked the Marines, what happened? Where did this guy come from? And they told him that they had heard.
From Tinfoil Hat, filmmaker Sean Stone exploring the abandoned Greystone Park Asylum in New Jersey, a real hospital that stood for over a century before it was torn down. Then, he says, hooded figures began appearing outside a friend's house night after night. The same cloak shadow people shape that witnesses keep reporting who have never met. Watch what happens on camera.
Basically, I would see this like guy outside. You couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. It was all cloaked, right? Like, remember, I Know What You Did Last Summer, like that kind of style, like just completely like hooded and like hat and everything. Like you can't see the person. And it had like a torch, not like a candle, but like some kind of like, torch light. And it was like chanting. And it was just standing in the street outside of his house chanting.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope.
And it would come, it would appear, like it wouldn't go every night, like, but occasionally like he would freak out, he'd run down, he'd come and like, he'd like open the door and it'd be gone. So like he was freaked out. And then, then like maybe like a week later it would show up and like the same thing. And then the craziest one was like one night there were 2 beings out there, okay? 2 figures. And he was recording.
On the Danny Jones podcast, T.D. Barnes, an Area 51 veteran, says the Navy's famous Tic Tac was not alien at all, but our own radar decoy launched from a submarine. Keep the anchor in mind. The Tic Tac gun camera videos are the very footage the Pentagon admitted was authentic back in 2020. He says we built the ghost.
But like I said, with palladium, we released all these different shapes and sizes. And we had the water disturbance, just like they describe in the Tic Tac. We had the submarine. We had
it deployed out of a submarine.
It deployed out of a submarine. With palladium, one of the F-15 pilots got on radio and he said, "I see the target."
Right.
Well, we thought he'd seen the submarine. We don't know what he saw.
Right.
But we dove the submarine, emergency, dove that submarine, thinking he'd seen it.
Oh, yeah.
So we caused disturbance. So they're seeing the same thing today. They're seeing disturbances in the water,
yep,
all kind of shapes and stuff.
Yep.
And even back then, it was spoof radar. And
American Alchemy plays the testimony of Donna Hare, a real former NASA contractor from Building 8, who says a colleague told her they airbrushed UFOs out of the photos before release. The checkable part hacker Gary McKinnon, arrested in 2002, says he saw the same thing from the outside. 2 people, one claim, opposite ends of the wall.
Him in England, yeah. And like he's amazing because he's just like a cool hapless guy. He's in his he's got some IT skills. at the time, and he's like in his girlfriend's, I think, aunt's basement, and it's like 3 a.m. And he does some like basic like password phishing techniques to break into Army, Navy, NASA, DOD, DOE, like everything, and gets into NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. They're building 8. The reason he targeted that is because Donna Hare was this whistleblower who had come out with Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, and she had said that she was basically involved in this kind of scrubbing of
Camp Gagnon with media theorist Douglas Rushkoff. In his telling, the occultist Aleister Crowley fed Hitler fake astrology to mistime the war. And here is the part you can actually check. Britain really did hire an astrologer, Louis D. Wool, to write phony horoscopes predicting Hitler's downfall. The magic may be up for debate. The disinformation was real.
For real. Aleister Crowley was recruited by Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote the James Bond stories. Ian Fleming was also MI5, part of that's the CIA kind of England during World War II. And he recruited Aleister Crowley to do magic against Hitler during World War II. And they were doing mainly to try to psych out Hitler. First, that he would know someone's doing magic against him and all that. And what Crowley really actually did historically was he created fake star charts, because they knew that Hitler was using star charts in order to decide his military actions, like astrological stuff. And they gave Hitler star charts that were designed to get him to do attacks in certain places and ways and times that were.
Mysterious Universe reaches back to 1758, and Emanuel Swedenborg, who wrote that for 12 years a veil lifted, and he spoke with spirits from other planets. Before you dismiss him, Swedenborg was a respected scientist and inventor first, which is exactly why his own century could not wave him away. He may be the grandfather of every channeler and contactee who came after.
This 12-year period where he just said the veil was kind of lifted, and he's able to communicate with all these different things that are getting around. And it's really hard. The way I took it is that these entities from, we're going to start with Mercury, because that's actually the kind of the biggest part of the book. But
okay,
the way he talks about them is really weird, because he says they're fully human, but they're also fully spirit. They have human form, like they look like humans, but in the way he talks about when they show up, how like one's standing a little to the left of him under his elbow, or one's a little to the right, kind of in the area of his knee. It's really...
And back to tinfoil hat to close it out. Guest JTfollowsJC says King Solomon commanded bound demons to raise the first temple, then ties it to the megalith supposedly stacked by the spirits of dead Nephilim giants. The grimoires that carry Solomon's name, the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key, are real texts you can hold in your hands. There is your through line, the buildings, made by things that were never human.
Use them to build the first temple, right? That's in that book. Isn't that right?
Yeah, in that book, yes, absolutely. He used certain demons, I think, to solve stones. He did some to weave fabrics. I think he did some to melt down gold for the foundations and things like that. Yeah, I mean, of course, it gets into some wacky stuff, but the stuff that is revealed in there, it's not something I could say for 100% is sure is true, but this is what I believe that a lot of the cultists and the Kabbalists believe, because that's why you get into like later that some of these witchcraft books like the Grimoire, the one of them is the lower keys of Solomon. So the Testament of Solomon is actually discussing, like it's basically telling the story about what happened.
Full episodes linked below. New rabbit holes every day. This is ConspWrld.